Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me today here in the middle of the week. And glad you're here. Grab your Bible and let's go to the 74th Psalm. Almost halfway through with the book of Psalms. Psalm 74. We're picking up in the first verse there, starting this psalm. And so while you're finding your place, let me give you a little bit of background of this psalm. You will notice in the superscription that it is a Maskil psalm, and this is the ninth time that we have seen this superscription. All total in Psalms, there is 13 of this type of psalm. And again, we've talked about this before. A simple way of describing a Maskil psalm is that it is a psalm for teaching, a psalm of instruction. And this psalm is teaching us uh, how to pray when bad things happen, when destruction comes, how to pray specifically not only when bad things happen, but when those bad things happen, and it seems like God has turned his back and is ignoring the situation. And this is certainly a psalm that describes such a situation. The enemy has came into the sanctuary and with fire and destruction into the tabernacle, the sanctuary. And so, we may not have exactly the same setting, but we have situations where financial crisis, family crisis, health crisis, on and on they go. When, like the psalmist, we feel um, overwhelmed, and we feel like that God simply doesn't care about us anymore. And again, this psalm was written in that kind of time. It was during a particular bad time in the nation of Israel. Generally, we don't know exactly when, but generally there are two events in the known history of Israel that would seem to fit the nature of the psalm. One of them is when the Babylonians destroyed Israel in 586, or the when the temple was defiled by Antiochus during the Maccabean age, about 170 BC. Most people generally believe it probably, when you look at the psalm, it's probably when the actual Babylonian uh, destruction that took place. And it's hard to tell exactly, but again, I think I don't know that it really sets that much, makes that much difference. We just know it was in a very difficult and dark time in the history of Israel. And we know that by the title or the superscription above it of the psalm, that its purpose was instruction, teaching, and how to pray when a disaster strikes and it seems like God is not aware. We see that opening thought here in the first verse. Oh God, why hast thou cast us off forever? And so once again, we see this principle that we've talked about on several occasions, numerous occasions, of the psalmist going straight to God and sharing his burden, telling God what's on his mind. God, I feel like you have abandoned us, and we never thought you would do that to your people, to the nation of Israel. Why doth thine anger smoke against the sheep of the pasture? And so he makes it very clear how he's feeling. And again, whatever event, whatever precipitated this psalm, had led the psalmist to believe that God had abandoned his people, was ignoring their situation. Again, he says, "Remember thy congregation, which thou hast purchased of old, the rod of thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed, this Mount Zion, wherein thou hast dwelt." And again, the operative word there is that word remember. You only remember something you have forgotten. And so the psalmist says, God, you've forgotten us. We have been overrun, we have been destroyed, the city's on fire, and we are overrun, and it appears to us that you have simply abandoned us. You haven't done anything to protect us. The enemies come in and pretty much ran wild on our city, destroyed our city, destroyed our tabernacle. And so remember your congregation. And we find ourselves, I think, most of us, or not all of us, sooner or later, find ourselves in situations like that where we feel like maybe God has forgotten us, and that we need God to remember remember us. And so he calls on God to remember his people. Verse 3, he says, "Lift up thy feet unto the perpetual desolations, even all that the enemy hath done wickedly in the sanctuary. Thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations, for they set up their ensigns for signs. A man was famous according as he had lifted up axes upon the thick trees. But that now they break down the carved work thereof at once with axes and hammers. They have cast fire into thy sanctuary. They have defiled by casting down the dwelling place of thy name to the ground. They said in their heart, let us destroy them together. They have burned up all the synagogues of God in the land." And so the psalmist here just kind of describes the situation. It was shocking to him. It was painful to him that God would allow an enemy to come into his city, Jerusalem, and destroy him. And so as they look at this, they see again just the utter destruction. This again, the psalmist here describes what had went on, that the enemies roar. They come roaring, just blazing right into the middle of town, and begin to destroy things and destroy the temple. They have set up their banner. Basically, it's like raising the line there that says they've set up their ensigns for signs. It's basically like what we would see today, if you remember the soldiers from Iwo Jima raising the American flag. It's the enemies have raised their flag over God's temple, and so again, he's just devastated that this is how they had done it. They came in and destroyed the temple with axes, and they have smashed it up and bashed it up, and then that wasn't good enough. They burned it down. And again, they, when we look at verse 8, they said in their heart, let us destroy them together. They have burned up all the synagogues of God in the land. They weren't content until they had basically made ashes out of everything that was of God. We see not our signs. There is no more any prophet, neither is there any among us, any that know how long. O God, how long shall the adversary reproach? Shall the enemy blaspheme thy name forever? Why withdrawest thou thy hand, even thy right hand? Pluck it out of thy bosom. And so there, the final, or not the final, but in this section, the final plea is as of this point in the story, God, you've done nothing. You haven't delivered us. You haven't protected us. You haven't driven out the enemy. And verse 9. Again, he says, we see not our signs. There is no more prophet. We haven't heard from you, Lord. We haven't heard from God, and in the meantime, the enemies are continuing um, to destroy and loot and be an embarrassment. And so the people of Israel here, the psalmist is um, you know just confused by what all is going on. And we conclude this section with that statement, why withdrawest thy hand, even thy right hand, pluck it out of thy bosom. Basically, the way I would say that, I think, if I was saying it today, is get your hands out of your pockets and do something. And so, they're just completely dumbfounded, overwhelmed by the attack of the enemy and the apparent lack of any concern on the part of God, the no response whatsoever from God. And I think as devastating as the actual actions of the enemy were, what was even more um, devastating to them was that they felt like God, as we saw in verse 1, that God had rejected them. God had turned his back on them, that God was angry with them, that he had forgotten about them. And so this was what was, I think, really tormenting these people and really, had them overwhelmed, and those are the exact same kind of feelings many times we have, even more than the situation we're going through. The fact that it seems like that God is a million miles away. It's one thing to go through a bad situation when we can sense the presence of God in our life, but when we're going through those times and we feel abandoned and rejected by God, then that's overwhelming. That's devastating. And I think again, I'm going to leave you with one simple lesson from this text, and you've heard me say it now numerous times as we've come through the Psalms. Is that when he felt that way, he told God about it. He went to God, and again, not in an irreverent way, not in a disrespectful way, but that he went to God and said, "Lord, this is how I'm feeling right now. I feel left all alone. I feel, I feel devastated. We've been attacked. We've been overrun, and worst of all, Lord, we just don't feel like we're hearing from you." And so the lesson I want to leave you with again, and I hate to keep saying it, but it just keeps coming up in the Psalms, and so I think God's wanting us to see it. He keeps telling us over and over, it's okay. We should, we can, again. And he was reverent. There's nothing, if you read that, he doesn't lash out at God. He doesn't, he's not disrespectful or unholy or whatever words you want to use, but he shares his heart, his feelings with the Lord. And so today I would encourage you, whatever you're going through, whatever you're feeling, reverently, respectfully, take it to God. Whatever your problem is, whatever circumstances you're going through, whether it's again, we listed some a few moments ago: family, finances, job, health, whatever it is, and you feel abandoned by God. You feel like He has deserted you. Go to God. Share with God how you're feeling and your concerns and your burdens. Be sure you have an open ear, a listening ear in your Father in heaven. All right, whatever you're going through, I hope that helps you today. And we'll see you back here first thing tomorrow morning.